time to respond to all chatbot questions during the workshop. SPD will collect answers to those questions and circulate them to the service list after the workshop. During the discussion, please use the hand raised function to speak, and moderator will do their best to call on attendees in order. After the question is asked, attendee should lower their hand. IT-related question can be directed to Eleanor with the CPUC email is jacob.williams@cpuc.ca.gov. Agenda will be relatively fixed to accommodate presenters and stakeholders' schedule. Flexibility allowed only if there is consensus. For introduction, let's do a quick roll-up. From CPUC, my name is Amin Emrani. I see Fred Hain, my supervisor, Coco Tomasian, Taru Chola, Julian Ennis, Jason Ortego, and Eddie Schmidt, Adam Bosch. I see them. I'm pretty sure there would be more from CPUC. From PG&E, is there anyone from PG&E on the call? And if yes, please, just a representative from PG&E introduce their team.
Hi there, this is Julie Colvin. We have a crew from PG&E on, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, sounds good. Is there anyone from Public Advocate's Office?
Hi, Amin. Yes, Cal Advocates is here.
Hey, Ben. How about Sempra companies?
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Tim Node with San Diego Gas and Electric Company. We have a number of folks on the call as well.
Hi, team. How about MGRA? Nobody's from Muse Grade Road Alliance, MGRA. How about TERN? Do we have anyone from TERN on call? Okay. How about SCE?
I mean, this is Brian Landry. We also have Kyle Faree on the line from Edison.
Okay. Thank you. How about California Farm Bureau? How about telecommunication representatives?
Hi, this is Ankur Patel from AT&T.
Thank you. How about Green Power Institute, GPI? How about California Utility Employees, CUE? And any parties or companies that they are attending and I didn't mention? Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we can move on. The purpose of this workshop is for staff to present on the details of revised SB8H4 project list data requirements guideline and provide an opportunity for initial question and answer. There will be at least another technical working group on June 10th next week, which will be an opportunity for stakeholders to present their feedback and recommendation on revised SB884 project list data requirement. Let's move on to slide 5. Basically, on January 30th, 2025, SPD presented the RAMP data template guideline during a technical working group session as part of the phase 4 of risk-based decision-making framework, or RDF, proceeding. Then on February 11, 2025, an administrative law judge ruling officially filed this data template and guideline into the RDF proceeding. SPD recognizes that the data template used in phase 2 application must align with the template used in both RAMP and GRC, general rate case filing. To ensure consistency, the structure of the data template and guideline staff proposal has been significantly influenced by the work already presented in the RDF proceeding. Additionally, this guideline is a revision of SB 884 project list data requirement preliminary that was attached to SPD 15. Moving to the next slide, although everyone should have had an opportunity to see our template structure already, we just wanted to give a brief high-level overview of individual tables, and then we'll go into each one in detail. Table 1 collects the key elements and characteristics of risk reporting unit, or RRU, including unique identifiers, mitigation plans, and associated risk. It defines how risk-related data is structured and categorized for consistent reporting for various progress reports and geographic locations. While Table 1 does include a total cost field, Table 2, which is cost breakdown, breaks down the cost into its constituents. This table breaks down the costs associated with mitigation effort, including labor, materials, and permits. It provides detailed cost allocation to track expenditure efficiently. Table 3 tracks changes and update the risk modeling and how that affects the risk associated with the asset mitigated by RRU or project. This allows us to compare current and previous risk model, risk scores, and costs across each of the 6 months progress report, energy, electrical utility plan 6 months progress report. It ensures transparency and accountability in how risks related to the electric grid are managed and reported. Table 4, HFTD and associated asset, documents low risk associated asset mitigated alongside primary high risk asset due to operational constraints or interconnected system. It includes associated asset miles, risk reduction for comprehensive project management of risk on electric grid infrastructure. Table 5, which is financial input table, provide financial parameters and metrics required to calculate and evaluate risk mitigation, including discount rate, the value of a statistical life or VSL, and present value revenue requirement, PVRR. These inputs ensure that economic factors are systematically integrated into risk evaluation. Table 6, or ICE calculation table, collects ICE calculation disaggregated to operational division broken down by HFTD2 and HFTD3. This table provides inputs that can be integrated into the ICE calculator to estimate the monetized value of electric reliability per customer minute interruption, or CMI, by categorizing outages by time of a day, season, and customer type. The ICE calculator integrates key reliability metrics such as SAIDI and SAIFI to estimate the impact of service interruptions. This table calculates electric reliability value or valuation for each operational division broken out by HFTD tier, which is further used for reliability consequence calculation. Moving to slide 7, before going through the detail of each table, I should mention that table 1, 2, and 4 hinges upon 3 crucial fields: the RRU ID, OEIS project ID, and undergrounding alternative mitigation fields. These are basically primary keys for these 3 tables. In fact, these 3 fields are crucial for linking table 1, 2, and 4. In previous phase 4 RDF proceeding workshop, we discussed the risk reporting unit, or RRU, in detail, and we are reviewing it in more detail in the next slide. However, it's worth emphasizing again that the naming schema should be simple and transparently understandable. One would not expect to see an RRU naming schema with a random selection of alphanumeric characters, nor would one expect to see a naming schema that is 42 characters long. Most importantly, a utilities RRU ID naming schema must not result in the reuse of RRU ID. OEIS project ID field correspond to project ID field as defined in the 10-year electrical undergrounding plan guideline published by Energy Safety on February 20th, 2025. Each RRU or project will have an undergrounding mitigation which will be listed in the undergrounding alternative mitigation field. For comparative purposes, the utilities are required to submit 2 alternative mitigations for each proposed mitigation. This means that in the data template for each RRU or project, we would expect to see 1 row with information relevant to the undergrounding mitigation and 1 row with relevant information for each alternative mitigation. So 3 rows for each RRU. As we see shortly in an example, that will mean many of the first field in a data template will exhibit repeated value for 3 rows that correspond to a given RRU or project. So in summary, in table 1 for each RRU or project, there will be 1 row for utilities undergrounding mitigation and 1 separate row for each alternative mitigation. It should be noted that all of these rows need to be recalculated again using the 3 discount rate mentioned in RDF. With that part, let's review the RRU. Matthew will cover RRU concept in this slide. Matthew, it's yours. Matthew, you're on mute.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Rapelson, and I'm with Level 4 Consulting, and we've been working with CPUC on this project. So in this first slide, we will discuss the definition of the risk reporting unit, and this language is meant to reflect discussions that have been occurring on this topic in the RDF proceeding. The first thing to note is that the definition for RRU intends to mirror the definition of the mitigation program as it is understood in the RDF proceeding. This is because RRU must aggregate up to the program level. In the case of SB 884, that means data and information associated with the undergrounding RRU must be able to aggregate up to the electrical undergrounding plan, EUP. And so that's a key point, is that the RRU is designed to allow accurate aggregation. Although having a definition of RRU is important, SPD also wants to make it explicit that the SB 884 data template guidelines how we expect the utility to organize an undergrounding RRU. Here, the SB 884 data template guidelines tell the utility that an RRU must be traceable through its life cycle, as well as forecastable and auditable. And of course, again, it must be able to aggregate up to the EUP.
Thank you,
okay,
Matthew.
Amin, I think that's it for this slide.
Thank you, Matthew. Let's move to slide 9. So back to table 1. Table 1 shall be, first thing, table 1 shall be submitted with phase 2 application and all subsequent progress report. In case where RRU IDs have not yet been created for certain project due to the reason we will discuss shortly, the table must still be submitted using the corresponding project ID. Once more detailed and updated information becomes available, reporting should transition to use of RRU IDs. Project ID must continue to be reported to enable traceability and continuity across reports. If a utility uses sub-projects in its phase 2 application but lacks detailed sub-project level forecast, it may initially report data at the project level aligned with table C11 of Energy Safety Guidelines under the 100% undergrounded concept. At this stage, RRU IDs may be left blank. Once sub-project level data becomes available, utilities must create unique RRU IDs and report data using OAIS project ID and OAIS sub-project IDs. The figure here shows the process for creating an RRU ID and data submission for phase 2 application with sub-project. For project that passes Screen 4, the energy safety guideline, the utility must provide updated data corresponding to the table C 13 for project or table C14 for sub-project, reflecting the undergrounding as concept, as a scope concept defined in the energy safety guideline. If the utility does not plan to break project into sub-project, it can report at the project level using table C11 for Screen 2 forecast and C13 for project that pass Screen 4, and assigning RRU ID at the project level throughout the phase 2 application and consequent progress reports. Moving to slide 10, table 1 primary keys or identifier, as I mentioned, are RRU, project ID, and sub-project, and undergrounding alternative mitigation field, which is not shown here, and we will discuss about it in the next slide. We put these field description here just in case anyone would like to return back to this slide and for further discussion. Let's move to slide 11. Moving to the tranche level field here, staff expect the utility to present a structure of the tranche in terms of which load, likelihood of risk event, and core, consequence of risk event quantile was used to establish the tranche in which the project resides. The structure must be based on the requirements for tranches found in the phase 3 decision. D2405064. If the utility writes a white paper to support an alternative approach to tranches, then a clear and easily understandable shorthand must be developed for reporting in this field. One point to reiterate, as discussed in phase 4 workshop number 1 staff proposal, each project can only mitigate the risk of asset or system found in a single tranche. So the utility can only present a single answer to this field. Regarding the other field on this slide, staff are expecting the utility to present a list of assets or systems that exhibit risk, which is mitigated by the RRU or project. We have provided a couple of examples here for electrical system in the next slide. Please note that this field should also include the list of associated assets, if any, found in table 4. For example, asset that will be added in the phase 2 or low risk asset that will be part of RRU because of the operational constraint. Moving to slide 12, basically in this slide, we have two RRU examples, 08W RRU A01 and A02. You can see how the RRU incorporate the 08W of undergrounding math and then just added RRU and alphanumeric characters at the end of distinguish these two RRUs. The two RRU examples listed include assets that are associated with different tranches. The first tranche is made up of highest lower 1, and highest core 1 quantile, while the second tranche is made up of highest lower 1 and the second highest core 2 quantile. Finally, we can see the list of assets which exhibit a certain amount of risk that's mitigated by RRU. In this list, we have CPZ ID number 1, which tells us that RRU is mitigating risk on that higher level isolated circuit segment, which PG&E calls CPZ or circuit protection zone. But within the CPZ, there are a number of poles and other assets. Here we have only listed the poles using SAP notation that PG&E use to keep track of assets. We recognize that poles have other notational formats as well. Staff expect that utility will provide an explanation of these notation in their application narrative or in a cover letter tab in their data template submission. The goal of having this list is to ensure that utility is transparently keeping track of which assets and system are being mitigation. This will help prevent any kind of double counting and make future audit of a utility revenue request for easier to conduct. We recognize that the utility can make change to the naming conventions of asset mitigated by RRU, which is why we have established another table called risk model change tracker table, and we will discuss about it shortly. Now, as you may have noticed, all of the information for each undergrounding RRU have 3 identical rows. That's to the undergrounding alternative mitigations field, which we discussed before, and we will discuss in the next slide. Before moving forward to the next slide, it's worth mentioning again that RRU ID and project OAI's project ID and undergrounding alternative mitigation are the primary keys to link table 1, 2, and 4. Moving to slide 13. As I mentioned, we already talked about all undergrounding alternative mitigations field. It said basically we want to talk how undergrounding alternative mitigation field must be structured and will become more obvious once we see an example in the next slide. After this field, all of the risk and cost related calculation that are required by the data template are based on what mitigation is listed in this field, either the undergrounding or alternative mitigation. Here, we also wanted to point out that the utility is expected to provide 1 or 2 justification, but only for the undergrounding mitigation. Staff feel that most of the individuals attending this workshop are very familiar with the concept of pre-mitigated and post-mitigated likelihood and consequences. So for the sake of convenience, we have only listed out pre and post-mitigated overall utility risk, which would be in a dollar value. Let's move, before moving to slide 14, we want to reiterate that for risk, utility may only include ignition, wildfire ignition risk, and outage program risk reduction in a CBR numerator calculation, but must clearly document that these components are mutually exclusive and there is no overlap. They must also provide the methodology how they use to quantify and combine these components. It's SPD's expectation that utilities will not be allowed to include other enterprise risk beyond ignition and outage program risk in their CBR calculation. Let's move to slide 14 with some example. In this slide, you can understand why each of undergrounding RRUs has 3 rows that are mapped to the proposed mitigation, which is obviously undergrounding in SB884 application, and 2 examples, 1 cover conductor alternative and another cover conductor plus EPSS alternative. Again, the justification is only necessary for row associated with undergrounding. As we can see, all of the risk and cost related data will be based on what type of mitigation is listed in the undergrounding alternative mitigation fields. Naturally, the pre-mitigated value should be the same for all these 3 rows because the asset being mitigated by RRU are all the same and therefore exhibit the same amount of risk. So the main difference will be the post-mitigated risk field, and differences would be expected for all of the post-mitigated field and the cost field, since this row would be relevant to the mitigation. Before talking about more element, I want to hand over the presentation to Matthew again for going through the concept of backcast. Matthew.
All right. So Table 1 also collects data on backcasted RRUs, such as the backcasted cost-benefit ratio, backcasted mitigation benefit, and backcasted present value cost fields. The goal of the backcast is to establish a bridge between the prior inputs and new inputs, which ensure an apples-to-apples comparison through time. And by prior inputs and new inputs mean inputs that are changing due to changes in methodology, changes in the data, changes in models, not real changes to the wildfire environment. And in order to align with the concept of a backcast as discussed in the RDF proceeding, the SB 884 data template guidelines include the definition presented here. When a utility elects to use a subproject designation, the concept of a backcast is essential in the SB 884 context to enable the consistent comparison between the forecasted RRU values reported in the progress reports and the backcasted RRU values that would have been calculated had the RRU structures been applied in the initial application using the data submitted at the time. Okay, Amin?
Thank you, Matthew. Let's move to slide 16. As we mentioned before, if the utility is electing to use sub-projects, it's possible that in phase 2 application, RRU IDs have not yet been created for certain projects, for example, because of lack of details. In this case, table may be submitted as a project level granularity in a phase 2 application. Later on, once more detail and updated information becomes available, reporting should transition to the use of RRUs and sub-projects. These three fields, backcasted field that we are showing here, enable a consistent comparison between the forecasted RRU values reported in the progress report and the backcasted RRU values that would have been calculated had the RRU structure been applied in the phase 2 application using the data submitted at that time. These fields may be left blank in a phase 2 application. Let's move to slide 17. Table 1 also collects the unit cost variance percentage, which is calculated as forecasted unit cost in phase 2 application minus updated unit cost from the progress report divided by forecasted unit cost in phase 2 application. For CBR variance percentage, again, we have two scenarios. If the utility elects to use sub-project designation and the detailed sub-project data is not available, then CBR variance percentage is calculated as a percentage difference between backcasted cost-benefit ratio and updated cost-benefit ratio in the subsequent progress report. If the utility elects not to use sub-project designation or the detailed sub-project data is available, then CBR variance percentage is calculated as a percentage difference between forecasted cost-benefit ratio submitted in the phase 2 and the updated cost-benefit ratio presented in a subsequent progress report. There are more detail available in the revised SB 884 project list data requirement with a formula and more information actually. Moving to slide 18, all tables that we are presenting here have two more fields, reporting data and calculated reporting date and calculating date, where the reporting date is a date when the data templates are filed or reported. Lastly, the calculated date is the date when the cost for undergrounding alternative mitigations field are calculated. It's typical for the calculated date to precede the reporting date, as the data in the tables are usually prepared prior to filing. Let's move to slide 19 and actually talking a little bit more about table 2. The RRU ID, project ID, and undergrounding alternative mitigation fields are again the primary keys for this table as well, and we are not showing them to have a better visualization of the table, but they are require an essential field in table 2, which breaks down the cost associated with each undergrounding and alternative mitigation, including but not limited to labor, materials, permits, and environmental costs. Labor includes all the required engineering, design, construction costs. Materials include all the required material costs. Permit and environment costs include permitting fees from local and state agencies, as well as costs associated with environmental impact assessments. notification from fire alarm. Sorry about that. Costs that don't belong in labor, materials, permits, and environmental field may be categorized in the other cost field. The total capex and total opex in this table should be equal to the total capex and total opex in the table 1. Let's take a closer look at some example in the next slide. Slide 20. As you can see, the RRU ID and undergrounding alternative mitigation fields are included in the example. Project ID and sub-project are not included for better visualization. Each row in table 2 ties to a row in table 1 with these 3 primary keys that we mentioned before. The example here shows that cost breakdowns for the undergrounding alternative mitigation for different RRUs. For each RRU, one can compare the cost breakdowns for 3 different mitigation. Here we are using undergrounding, which is obvious for SPA-84, cover conductor and cover conductor plus EPSS. The table shows that the undergrounding is more costly in all cost category than in its alternatives. Let's move to slide 21 and talk about table 3. Table 3 is a risk model change tracker. In some cases, utilities might update their risk models during the SPA-84 program from phase to application to progress report, which have rendered output that are different from the previous version. In other cases, utilities might change the length and asset of, for example, CPZ, which have created much confusion and obscurity. To address these issues, the staff have created this table, the risk model change tracker table, which tracks changes and update the risk model, update to the risk model and how that affect the risk associated with the asset and system mitigated by RRUs or project. This allows for comparing risk model, risk score, and other changes through the application and ensure transparency and accountability in how risk in the electric grid are managed and reported. The first 3 fields in the table are RRU project ID and sub-project ID, which are not shown here. If some aspect of RRU change between, for instance, the subsequent progress report, then the utility must list these changes in this table. The current risk model is the name and version of the updated risk model used to calculate the risk score and asset mitigated by RRU or project. The following current total MOG, current pre-mitigated risk score, and current risk percentage are dependent on the current risk model. I won't go through each of these fields as they are not a new concept. The change type is the identification of how the assets or system mitigated by RRU have been redefined. The inputs in this field include new data, input in a risk model, new construction, renaming, a split or merger. For more information or more detail actually are available in revised SPA-84 project list data requirement guideline. Additionally, table 3 include a field for same risk data based on the previous risk model, such as previous risk model, previous total MOL, previous pre-mitigated risk score, and risk percentage. Last 2 are not shown here. These allow comparison of risk data between the changes in risk model, as well as tracking of changes in a circuit segment length. Let's take a look at some example. Let's move to slide 22. Here's a risk model change tracker for 2 RRUs. As you can see, between risk model V3 and V4, the pre-mitigated risk score has changed between of new data input to the risk model. We can see the change when we compare the current pre-mitigated risk score and previous pre-mitigated risk score field. Moving to slide 4. Table 4 collects information on asset located in HFTD and how mitigating a specific associated asset can affect the risk reduction, cost, and CBR of proposed RRU. The RRU ID and project ID and undergrounding alternative mitigations field are primary key for this table as well, but we are not showing it in this slide. In the first two fields, the utility would record whether the asset that RRU mitigates are located in HFTD tier 2 or 3. Then the utility would also provide number of miles in a wildfire rebuild area if applicable. The next field is similar to the list of assets in table 1, except here we are only looking for a low risk associated asset. These assets might be included in RRU or project due to the operational constraints or need to mitigate risks that exist on secondary and service lines. In addition to listing all these associated assets, the utility would include the number of miles in the next field. The subsequent cost and risk reduction field would be based on the specific mitigation and associated asset that would be mitigated. We can see this more clearly in the next slide, slide 24. We can see that RRU undergrounding alternative mitigation fields link this information back to table 1. In the associated asset field, if the utility does not plan to mitigate any associated asset, then a utility may leave that field blank or report 0 in the corresponding cost and risk reduction field. This can be seen in the second and third rows. The cost and risk reduction change depend on associated asset that would mitigate it and the mitigation itself, whether it will be undergrounding, cover conductor, or cover conductor plus EPSS. Moving to slide 25 or table 5. Staff believe most of the financial input required by table 5 should be fairly well known to everyone on this call. We have 3 discount rate reflected the scenarios required by phase 3 decision. The monetization value of safety, VSL, is required by phase 2 decision. However, the monetization value of electric reliability is calculated in table 6. Since SPD requires utilities to disaggregate the electric reliability valuation or dollar value per customer minute interrupted by operational division or headquarter and HFTD tier. We'll explain this further in the next slides. The present value revenue requirement is a modifier that intends to estimate the revenue requirement that would actually impact the rate payers for the lifetime of asset. Since the ICE calculator is intending to be updated by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab over the coming year, the utility should also record the ICE calculator version in table 5. Let's move to the last table on table 6. In the final 3 slides, SPD has listed the data template that are most relevant for understanding how the ICE calculator is used to generate a monetized value of electric reliability. The first field is the most important one because it designates the level of granularity that SPD expects the utility to use to generate the value for the rest of the fields in a table. SPD staff are asking the utility to provide data that would allow a more granular monetized value of electric reliability using the ICE calculator. This would require the utility to divide up each operational division and or headquarter by HFTD2 and HFTD3 and then provide values for the remaining data fields at that level of granularity. So just as an example, PG&E would provide the total number of residential customers within the HFTD of Yosemite, operational division, and so on. For example, it can call Yosemite 3, meaning operational division of Yosemite, and portion of that operational division located in HFTD 3. Let's skip slide 27 and move to slide 28. As we discussed in the previous slide, for each row of operational division headquartered by HFTD tiers field, utilities have to calculate electric reliability valuation corresponding to that operational valuation and HFTD tier. Electric reliability valuation is later used in table 1 to calculate the reliability consequence value of the related RRU or project. This is the last slide for presentation, and now we can go to question and answer on SPD data template.
You can also put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. Awesome. We got one hand raised from Brian.
Hey, man, thank you very much. So I have a question about the ICE calculator. I noticed those data fields are from the ICE 1.0 calculator, but the recently released ICE 2.0 calculator does not contain those data fields. Additionally, if an IOU would like to use a different granularity than regional or HFTD tier, is that flexibility allowed? So 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you for question. So we this is the as we talk in an email, this is the first draft of data template, and if ICE Calculator 2 has different field, we need to update that table based on ICE Calculator 2. Regarding to your second question, that if utilities can use different granularity, I don't have answer, and we prefer the same granularity because it can help us to use the basic consistent comparison. It can provide the consistent comparison among different utilities. But I don't have any like answer for you at this point, like firm answer.
Yeah, and just one follow-up too. If you have 3 different risks, let's say an outage risk and a wildfire risk, they may have different SAIDI and SAIFIs. So are you presuming that you would have to use a consistent SAIDI SAIFI between those?
So what happened is for CBR calculation, we assume that utilities use a combination of wildfire ignition plus outage program. Although in table 1 we are getting all of those components, but at the end for CBR calculation, which is the point of table 1 actually, we are getting the combination. So as I mentioned, the last field in basically electric reliability valuation, which is $ per CMI, that we are the whole point of table 6 is just used for risk, total utility risk actually. Did I answer your question?
I think maybe you have to go through an example of how that works because they don't exist in the same universe.
No, I understand, but at the end of the day, for CBR numerator, utilities usually use the combination of both two, correct?
I think we would just have to work through a calculation because I don't know if you're going to have the same SAIDI SAIFI for both those types of risks.
Okay.
So it would be helpful so that we understand it better if you for the next round came up with that numerical example to explain the question a little bit better.
Yeah, so Matt, if you put 9, let's say, I don't know, 10 for a SAIDI and 1 for a SAIFI for wildfire, you would have to assume that that's the same SAIDI SAIFI for a PSPS, which is simply not the case. Maybe we'll work through the calculator next show.
So let me ask you a question. So basically what you are suggesting is we would have $2 per CMI, one for outage program and one for wildfire ignition.
What I'm saying is that it seems like utilities, at least right now, are not afforded that option to have 2. You're assuming that you're forcing them to have 1.
That's a good point. Definitely, we are considering that. Thank you so much for feedback.
Okay. I mean, we also have a question in the chat from Julie.
Yes, sure.
It says for table 1, can SPD please further elaborate on the backcasting reporting expectations as referenced in the RDF proceeding? She still understands these requirements are still under staff proposal and not yet final. Is backcasting only requested when a risk model version changes?
Actually, we are using backcast concept because we expect that in some scenarios, utilities that they are planning to do sub-project designation at the beginning of the phase 2 application, they don't have enough information and they submit their data. They submit this table 1 through 6 at the project level, which is bigger than that might be bigger than sub-project and RRU. And further on, like 6 months, 1 year later, in their progress report, they use when they have more, like they scope the project and they have more data, they would use RRU and sub-project. So basically, the reason that we use table 1 collects 3 backcast element is to basically try to provide some apple-to-apple comparison between the RRU that utilities are reporting in their progress report, comparing to bigger project level data that they reported in phase 2 application. Julie, did I answer your question?
Updating. That's not.
I think we need to just dig into this a little bit more, and I think might be worth a follow-up on the next workshop too. Because we're
Sure.
trying to understand too, are you comparing the sub-project data points to just the project level, or are you comparing the changes? What types of inputs are changing across sub-projects over time? I think we're just trying to
I
understand
think
those expectations.
This is Matthew. You nailed it. So clearly, if you've created, you've gone from project to sub-projects at some later date, you can't compare a sub-project at the later date to the original project. So one aspect of a backcast would be to split the original project into what the RRUs would have been, basically. So now you can compare the RRUs from the future time to back to the original time. That is one application of a backcast.
Do you have, I'm curious of your expectation of how you see RRUs differing from sub-projects, if at all?
It's not different.
Okay, that's what we thought
But
too,
at
but
the-
we saw there's an RRU ID that differs from sub-project ID, so I just wanted to clarify that too.
Oh, the naming can be different, but the thing is, the whole point of what Matthew said and what we were saying is, we assume that there would be some like situation that we have project and you don't have information, or utilities don't have information to create sub-project or RRU, basically when they want to scope the data. So basically at the moment that utilities have detailed sub-project data, they have to create RRU. So timing wise, at the moment that you have sub-project ID, you should have RRU ID as well.
They would be the same thing.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or again, you can put it in the chat if you want to.
I got a couple more, so. I'll keep
Awesome.
asking. Okay, table 1, regarding the filings. I know it basically asks for us to report the relevant filings, including advice letters, PFMs, where the RRU or projects reported and the budget is requested, like in the GRC or the WMP. I am curious, because I'm kind of trying to get a sense of the intent of this requirement, given particularly on the WMP, we estimate risk at a high level based on circuit segments that we've identified for the program. We don't include, say, sub-projects or projects in the WMP, nor is it tied to a budget in the WMP. So might be worth clarifying the ask here. And so same for PFMs as well. And so is the question, is this only for, EUP funded work? I imagine not. Or if it is just EUP funded work, if it's also, seeking funding in other proceedings. But I think trying to nail down what is being requested here, particularly on the filings.
On high level, I can answer that the data that we are requesting and should be submitted in a phase 2 application of EUP and the progress reports. So this is very high level response, but for more details, I don't know if Fred has some response or Coco.
Can you turn to the slide that talks about those fields?
Which slide do you want? Are you talking about this one?
I don't think I see it on this deck, but it is a field in table 1.
In the underlying tables, Eddie wants to respond.
Julie, could you just clarify what was the name of the field that you were asking about?
Table 1 field is called filings, and it references, it's a list of all filings, including advice letters, petitions for modification, where the project is reported and a budget is requested, including but not limited to the GRC or WMP.
Okay. And your concern is that because it's at the RRU level or the project level that you would not be able to provide that information. Is that correct?
That's right. And it also specifies that it's tied to a budget requesting funding. And so, for instance, the WMP, we're not seeking funding there. So would be worth clarifying there. And, the fact that we don't submit our user sub-projects in the GRC or the WMP.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's something that we can look at further, and we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And yeah,
that's it. There you go. Thanks.
Any other question? There is no question. We can go on a break for 10 minutes. It's 1:57. We can extend it to 13 minutes and come back at 2:10. So see you everyone in a bit.
Thanks, Amin.
Mean. Julie added a few more questions in the chat.
Yes, I see that. Thank you for letting me know. I think, hello everyone, let's go through some general discussion, and if there are some questions, we can go through that. Julie sent us like 4 questions. I can start from the first one. In several instances, the data table risk ask for risk information. Can you please clarify if you are referring to overall utility risk throughout unless otherwise specify? Yes, that's correct. So when we are talking about risk ranking, this is the risk that you are or utility uses for calculating CBR. So it would be overall utility risk. Correct. So this is the first one. In ICE 2 workshop on June 24, consider the last of EUP related technical working group, which can changes the timing of the issuance of the final reporting guideline to July 24 instead of. Correct. That's correct. So June 24, which is the technical working group for ICE 2, is the last technical working group for SP 84 data guidelines. So 1 month after that would be July 24th. Based on the timing of these workshop and informal comment, is there an update on anticipated timing of issuing resolution SPD 15.2? I prefer to defer that question to Fred or Coco or Eddie if they are on call. Can we provide some update on the anticipated timing of issuing resolution SPD?
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention that I think what the June 24th technical working group is at this time the last scheduled technical working group, and then there is not currently a specified timing for the issuing of the resolution of SPD 15.2.0, but it is currently being worked on.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Question for OIS. The OIS EUP technical guidelines require us to submit CPUC guidelines Appendix 1 with or Phase 1 application. I assume these changes to the SPD reporting guideline of Appendix 1 mean these reports will be filed in the Phase 1 application and subsequent progress report. Can you please confirm? I believe so. I believe that for Phase 2 application and all subsequent progress report, basically Appendix 1, the CPUC guideline Appendix 1, and the data are required to be submitted. Did I answer
Yeah, I
your
think
question,
this
Julie?
is just tied. Well, it's more for the energy safety guidelines because they refer to the CPUC's Appendix 1. And so we're assuming, this replaces that, and this would then be part of Phase 1 application in addition to obviously Phase 2. So we're just wanted to make sure we're connecting the dots between the reporting.
Yes, correct. Thank you for confirming that. Coco, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the interpretation and requirements relative to the energy safety guidelines are for energy safety to interpret. I think as far as the commission is concerned, our hope is that the Appendix 1 that is finalized after the conclusion of these technical working groups are the set of information that a utility would submit with its plan to energy safety. But that would be for energy safety to determine. That would be our hope, at least, that's what information would be submitted.
Thanks, Coco.
Thank you, Coco. So, Julie, did we answer all your questions, or at least try to answer your questions?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So, do we have other questions from audience? Otherwise, we posted some questions in technical working group, actually, guidelines, 7 questions, and I can go through them if we can get any feedbacks from a stakeholder. So, I can share my screen. We shared that file with you, I think, 2 weeks ago. But in case someone like don't have it handy, so I'm sharing it again. So the first question is proposed SPA84 project list data template helpful to reconciling differences, if any, between the data template used in SPD 15 and data requirement found in the current energy safety guideline? And if so, how? I don't know if anyone want to discuss, reply. By the way, before moving forward, we have another technical working group next week. So I can assume that we would have more discussion and feedback next week, but it's worth mentioning to just go through these questions, and these are some of our concerns that we want to share with the stakeholder, and we would appreciate any feedback. The next question would be, if you believe the proposed SPA84 project list data template create difficulties in reconciling the data template issue in SPD 15 and the data requirement found in the energy safety guideline, explain your position. The third question would be, what additional data do a stakeholder recommend be included in the final SP84 project list data template? Why? In particular, how would that data help stakeholders and decision makers in their evaluation of utilities phase 2 application for an EUP? And question number 4, which data do stakeholders think should be omitted from the SP84 project list data template, and why? And if you recommend omitting the data, explain how you believe a change will help stakeholders and decision makers in their evaluation of a utilities phase 2 application for an EUP. And question number 5, do any field descriptions of each data stream require correction or clarification? Provide recommended language for the field description and explanation for the proposed change. Are there any incorrect field value constraint? If so, please explain what the correct field value constraint should be and why. And finally, what method, including a satellite imagery, can the Commission employ to monitor the implementation of SP84? So these are some questions that we are looking forward to hear your feedback in this technical working group or next week. So any feedback, any question, any comment? Yes, Julie.
Just a suggestion. We have a few topics that we have some interpretations of some of the requirements. We're considering if you all would be amenable to send over those interpretations to you in advance of the workshop to just see if we confirmed that we have it correct. So that can help with some of the conversation next week.
Sure.
You all amenable to that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Do we have, oh, I raised my hand. Do we have, oh, we have, I'm seeing one person. Oh, it's me. Sorry about that. Do we have any more comments or questions or topic that you would like to talk about regarding SP84 data template? seems we don't have any questions or concern, at least for this workshop. So I think we can give you like 1 hour and 40 minutes back. If everyone agrees on that we conclude the meeting, this technical work, we can conclude it like early. Oh, Eddie wants to add something. Eddie, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a question for Brian, if he's still on the line. Dr. Landry, are you still here with us?
Hey, Eddie.
Hi, good to hear from you, and thanks for your questions about the ICE calculator. I was curious, is Edison now considering filing an SB80 or an EUP to energy safety?
Eddie, I don't have the answer to that. But I just want to make sure that if this is going to be built off of the RDF proceeding, we make sure we have knowledge of what is actually in the ICE calculator.
Thank you very much for your answer. Appreciate it.
Yes, and just add on Eddie's question, we appreciate any feedback from you, especially if we can make this data template better or more comprehensive. We appreciate that. Okay, so it seems that we don't have any other questions or comments. So I appreciate you attending these. I really we thank you for attending this workshop, and see you next week. And I can give you like 1 hour and 40 minutes back. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Amin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amin.